We are live, and welcome everyone to the first Valor developer stream. My name is Austin MacKenzie. I am the lead designer and owner of Valorous Games, and today we are going to talk about the Freeway Combat session that we had during our episode 3 of Valor Live, Immortal Wind. And if you are in chat, feel free to hop on in and ask questions. I'll get to those if I've got time afterwards. But otherwise, yeah, there should be some fun mechanics to get through today. And yeah, let's jump right on in. So the idea behind the Freeway Combat is actually a scene that I'd had in mind for a long time, and I approached Zach, the GM, with these mechanics, and he was thankfully absolutely on board, which is always a fun time for me. Zach's been enormously receptive to all of the ideas and the cool things that I want to see done in the Valor stream, so it's always a lot of fun to work with him and get that kind of rapport going and come up with cool and interesting things to do in the system. So the idea behind the Freeway Combat system, and we'll be talking more about the rules for that as opposed to the fighting a dragon on the freeway, which had some special mechanics to it, but was honestly a fairly simple extension of what we're here to discuss today. But yeah, since it was just this really cool set piece, I wanted to make some mechanics that were simple and that really encouraged the players to act like action movie heroes, really. The idea behind doing this kind of thing is giving them a chance to, and really encouraging them to like jump from car to car, or like steal motorcycles, the kind of things that you would see in those big blockbuster Hollywood action movies, and translating that into a pretty simple rule set that you can kind of learn on the fly. I think honestly the players did a great job with it, especially considering how many of them are still kind of learning the system. So if you are interested in bringing this kind of a scene to the game, these rules will be up on our itch.io page after this discussion, and they will be free to all of our Patreon backers who back past who back above $1, basically at the $5 price point or above. So kind of when building these rules, I had a few goals in mind. Obviously, simplicity is a big part of it. In Valor and in Valor design is always very important for us to make our mechanics simple, easy to follow, but still engaging and still feel like Valor and feel like they are allowing the players to act in kind of that valorous manner, which is a big part of our overall design philosophy. In general terms, the operation of the vehicle was pretty simple. Whoever was selected as the driver would be kind of stuck in the vehicle. But we wanted to make sure that even if you're driving, you can still do a lot in combat, which those who did watch Immortal Wind got to see that Gemma was able to still fire off her hairpins and all of that other fun stuff, which very, very much an important part of that sequence. So attacking out a vehicle, even if you're driving, absolutely doable. The general caveat is that the character must be positioned by a window of some sort, given the party's relative size, and they did have an extra passenger with Lumi, but Lumi had her own means to get out, which she donated to Kaylin. But the point being, the whole party should generally, as we come up, be able to attack and do so freely during the sequence. So everyone can attack in a car, but you are kind of bound by your location. So you're firing out of a window, basically. Moving the vehicle, if you are the driver, is pretty simple. It's just your move action, so you're not really losing anything by being the driver. And in fact, you gain something by being a driver, and that you have that freedom of mobility that you might not otherwise have as a passenger. Which, again, if you're a passenger, you can swap seats very easily. The swapping drivers, we made a very simple action, support action for anyone who's performing a swap. So a driver could be swapping out with someone could be swapping in, but just that person who's initiating that action would use their support action to make that crossover and make that change. That way it keeps the action flowing, and it gives that kind of extra layer of strategy in that you can kind of figure out, who do I want to spend their action, who's got that free support action to burn, and make that swap happen. So if you've got a healer in the driver's position, for example, which Gemma, I believe, does have some healing capability, if someone had wanted to swap in with her, it might have been better for them to use their own support action to kind of flip her out so that she could retain her support action if healing ended up being needed. Because we want to encourage that dynamic action of like jumping between vehicles and grabbing vehicles from other people, or jumping onto an occupied vehicle for an enemy. We did not require a roll or check of any sort for someone to just jump to another vehicle. The ruling was, if you can move far enough to do it, then you can do it. And really the purpose here is to, like, I understand in typical RPGs, there's always that idea that it's like, oh, well, if I'm doing something outside of combat, or if I'm doing something special, it should always require a challenge roll or a skill check or something like that. Because in Valor we try to be more cinematic, I'm always in the back of my head as a GM thinking, if I require someone to roll something, that means that there's a risk factor involved, and that they are, by that nature, discouraged from attempting it, because there is the possibility that it could go wrong. Just thinking about being a character in the middle of a freeway, jumping from car to car, if there was that fear of failure, even if I didn't make the penalty all that high, we just as people obviously would consider that like, no, I don't want to do that, right? That's scary, that's dangerous. Even with my characters being strong, I might still hesitate to take that action, because I would be scared of that failure, even if I know intellectually that failure is not bad. So better, in my eyes, to just make this part of the flow of the scene than to actually penalize someone for failing to make that cool action movie jump. And we did have some mechanics in place to be able to, with the dragon mechanics, where in certain circumstances, if someone failed, we would use the bottomless pit rules, where the character makes it out by the skin of their teeth, and then they lose 4 valor for doing so, which you can incorporate here if you really want to have some kind of check involved. But I personally recommend it, because I think for this kind of scene, it's more fun and it's more exciting for characters to feel unburdened than to just jump onto someone else's motorcycle and take it from them, or jump onto a van and get in a sword fight on top of it. Like, those are the kinds of things that I want to see in this kind of a scene. So I want to remove as many of those barriers as I can to encourage it. So yeah, jump into a vehicle, so long as you can move it, you can do it. And I'm realizing here that I actually repeated that in this document. So I will make sure that before this goes up on itch.io, I will make sure that we get the fully edited version so that it doesn't have any weirdness like that. But yeah, that aside, let's talk collision then. The collision rules that we put together, the idea here was that we wanted to kind of pay respect to the fact that bigger vehicles can really push other vehicles around, but as is very frequently one of our major design goals, we didn't want a motorcycle getting hit by a van to just be game over for the person riding the motorcycle, because then no one would want to drive the motorcycle. Again, we're not reality based. We are very much anime style action movie based. So for us, it is absolutely imperative that if someone is doing something cool, but possibly risky, they're not risking everything. Any risk within it is contained and acceptable. So, to that end, if a vehicle moves into another vehicle, they collide. And then, in this case, this advantages the larger vehicles. So, if a motorcycle hits another motorcycle, they both lose durability, and one motorcycle can push the other, since you've got the momentum on your side, and you can sort of push it around. That makes it more fun, more interesting. But if a car rams a motorcycle, or a van rams a motorcycle, obviously they can push it, whereas a motorcycle could not push a car or a van, because in a matchup between vehicles, the bigger one's always going to come out on top. And you can see this with the durability loss, which we'll get into a bit later. The motorcycle will take considerably more damage. And the motorcycle has a lot less capability to take damage before it becomes basically completely incapacitated than the larger vehicles that are more defensive, that are enclosed and have their own kind of steel cage around you. The van, of course, overpowers the car. So if a van rams a car, obviously the van can push the car, whereas the car cannot push a van if it ran into it. And then we have some rules for if it runs into a barrier, where the vehicle will, if you're sliding along the barrier, you'll continue to lose durability for each space that you're running alongside it, since in that case you're just scraping up and you're destroying your vehicle. Also, for this, we wanted to make sure that we had rules for unattended vehicles, where if you, for example, were to knock someone out and they weren't really paying attention to their motorcycle, the vehicle would then deaccelerate and would be removed from the map. We just, due to time and due to capability, and that section still ran very long, but that kind of, in hindsight, something you would expect. But the idea with the unattended vehicles is really, I guess, more for some other folks who might want to use these rules and have the time where you've got this continuous freeway sequence where new enemies are spawning in, and it's like this big chase. This gives you a lot of capability to kind of mess with the flow of the sequence, and gives you the opportunity to keep adding new vehicles in, and having the heroes taking out flunkies who are riding motorcycles or whatever, and then adjudicating what happens to them after the fact, which also gets into the stealing vehicles, which we had some of, since we presented a very ripe looking target, which the party of course went after. So in the case of stealing a vehicle, we ruled in general, if the vehicle is operated by a flunky, you could just take your entire turn to take it from them. And that, in my eyes, really encapsulates a lot of what you would see in these kinds of action movies. Like, in like Die Hard or, Rush Hour or whatever. If they're in some kind of a chase scene, the hero is always going to just be able to go in and grab the nobody or whoever who's in the car and like toss them out and just take it from them. So making that require more of like the combat roles and action expenditure, it just didn't feel right for a vehicle manned by someone who's just of so low stature. So we made stealing from flunkies basically just take your entire turn and you've done it. You jump over, you kick the flunky out, you're good to go. Alternately, though, for more powerful enemies, for soldiers, for elites, for masters, the expectation then becomes much higher. That is when you're actually going to be engaging with the combat system, because that's really where it's going to be the most exciting. Like if you're getting on a if you're getting in a sword duel on top of a van, or you're trying to extricate someone who's like driving and shooting at you while you're on the top of his vehicle. It's not going to be fun if it's a flunky, but if it's like an elite, someone who's as strong as you are, then it becomes much more exciting. So then you want to bring it into the combat system and make sure that you're getting I guess the most bang for your buck in terms of how that's presented. But stealing a vehicle, flunky, easy. From anyone else, much harder. In this case, we actually did outline the actions that would be required. So, in this case, if you manage to disable someone who is driving a vehicle, then you would have that full action economy default. You would need to use your move action to jump over to the vehicle. You would need to use a support action to commandeer that vehicle. And then you would use your move action, or use another move action, or you could potentially exchange your attack action to do this, to then start driving it. But at the very least, if you took control of that vehicle, it would not deaccelerate and leave the map as would an unattended vehicle. Damaging vehicles obviously was a big thing. The general rule of thumb we went with this was if you're throwing a line or you're throwing a blast attack, something that targets a wide radius, a wide area, and does damage to a lot of that part of the road, then it's going to damage the vehicle just by extension of that. In addition, obviously, we had the ramming rules. There would be durability damage incorporated in with that. But if you're slinging fireballs across the road too, that is also going to damage your cars, and as it should. And then finally, we did have a ruling for persistent effects on the road. This was something we definitely needed to address, since the Mist Dragon, or the Sky Dragon, excuse me, which utilizes mist as its primary form of attack. It would create functionally darkness zones, which would stay on the field. But with the assumption that everyone is rolling down the freeway at breakneck speed, it doesn't make sense for these effects to just kind of stay there and stay static, because you're going to blow right past it. But even though the space-wise it probably doesn't make exact sense, we just ruled that they would go back by 5 spaces every turn. It's easy, it's a simple number, and it continues to make that attack relevant for at least one more turn before it goes away. So it's not just a full nerf on any kind of persistent effects. There's still some benefit to be had from using them. Just they are weaker due to the nature of the scene that you are in. But so that's kind of how it works and why we set it up the way that we did. If you're looking to use these mechanics for your own game, you should be able to do so with relative ease. I wouldn't anticipate any kind of problems just using these basic rules as is. And you are, of course, welcome and encouraged to add any embellishments you might see, just to spice things up a bit or fit your own personal style. I'm going to take a moment here. I technically have my chat up, but I'm not sure if I'm actually seeing it, so I'm going to try and confirm that I am seeing my stream proper, but that I'm not also giving audio keys to myself, which I definitely do not want to do. Okay, but that aside, let's talk vehicle options. So the idea behind the vehicles is that you would be able to use them, and they would each be designed kind of with their own specialties and with their own capabilities. So we kept it pretty simple in terms of the sorts of vehicles that you could utilize But within that, we wanted to give a good variation to make sure that the kind of vehicle you pick, you could really gun for something that was going to suit your situation. And again, a lot of these rules would probably see more use in a longer freeway focused scene, which maybe we'll get a chance to do that somewhere down the line. But for this, we offered three basic options that all kind of had their own quirks and their own drawbacks to sort of provide a good range. In Immortal Wind, we equipped the party with a van and with a motorcycle in the back, so that someone could have it just by virtue of that being there. Someone could immediately strike out on their own and start fighting on the road if they wanted, which I believe did happen. So yeah, motorcycles, very basic vehicles. Their maximum durability is 6. So in terms of the hits they can take, especially considering that they take considerable damage from other vehicles colliding with them, they're pretty weak. But they're very mobile. They start with a move of 8, which especially at this level and with the move speed people are used to seeing them being somewhere in the 4 to 6 range, that's very fast. Obviously, they can seat 2 people. Motorcycles, being you can have someone right behind you. That's a pretty simple fix. And just because they are so fast and mobile, we gave them the split move skill inherently, which lets you split your movement into 2 different portions. So you could move 3 spaces and use your giant sword to knock a motorcycle away, and then you could move 5 more spaces away to reference another anime-esque property that involves a extended highway battle sequence. The big thing about motorcycles is they get very weak very quickly. So as it takes damage for each 2 points of durability damage it takes, and then for that final one, when it gets down to the 1 meter, it loses 2 movements. So by the end of it, your motorcycle's not moving very fast. Like, if you get sideswiped by a van, you're already down to 4 movement, and throw in a blast radius there, and you're down to 2 movement on this motorcycle. So these things are not gonna really carry you the minute they start taking hits. Motorcycles did have a special property in that they were considered open vehicles, though. So that means that you can kind of originate your technique out of any point that you want. Whereas in a car, for example, you can only just kind of shoot your technique out your window. But the downside, obviously, is it's less protective. So again, it's definitely kind of intentionally the weakest of the vehicles, but it has a very clear tactical purpose. And it would be something that you would see probably most of your enemies would be riding motorcycles trying to catch up with you, obviously, since they're so fast. And if you're plodding down the road in a van, it makes sense that motorcycles would be the best vehicle to catch you. And being kind of more solo or duo affairs, it offers a lot of opportunities for people to jump on and jump off, and they're relatively disposable in that case. The cars next. The players did not start with a car, but we did have some cars, and we had a special car, which I'll also get to. The idea behind the car, obviously, is just kind of your standard of your baseline. So one of the big things I wanted to make a point of is obviously cars can hold 4 people, or it can hold 5 people if someone's going to sit in that little space in the back seat that no one ever actually wants to sit in because it's not comfortable in the slightest. But if you are, say, the youngest of several male cousins, it is the place that you will probably end up sitting the most. Not that I speak from experience here. So with the car, if you're going to pack it, then you're in a bit of a problem because the middle space, they can't really attack out of it. They don't have a free window. But you can pack everyone in there pretty easy. That's a good enclosed that enclosed property, which again kind of limits you to only attacking out of windows, which means that it provides a +1 defense bonus to all defense rolls, which in Valor, +1 to defense, very good. It's a very strong buff. It's reasonably quick. It has a move of 5, so obviously motorcycles can way outpace it. But it also its movement doesn't decline as quickly, and it's much more durable, starting with a max durability of 8. So it starts as it starts to take damage, it starts to break apart. So it starts moving a bit slower. It starts to lose defense, but it also, in a sense, gains some perks. You can see at the meter here, if you reduce it to 4, you'll lose that defensive bonus that the car's cab had been giving you, but the back window shatters. So now everyone can shoot techniques out the back window, as opposed to in close space where you were trying to go for the window, which means that the poor young soul sitting in the middle wedged between two other adventurers can now actually shoot out of their car. Benefit. And then if the meter goes down to 2, you've basically blown the top off the car entirely, so the vehicle then becomes open because you guys are now sitting in the convertible. Lucky you. Car, as with motorcycle, declines to a minimum speed of 2. At their lowest point, all vehicles are kind of running at the same speed of not very quickly at all and should not be on the freeway. But that aside, van then is our final vehicle, and this is the big boy. This is the largest, most durable of vehicles, and because it's going to offer the most protection, but it's also slow. I would say intentionally the van was made to be the strongest vehicle. Its size, its defensive capabilities, all of which very good. The fact that it can hold so many passengers. This is the idea being that if the players are sitting in a van, and another van comes along, they know that is a prime target that they need to target right away, because there could be up to 8 enemies sitting in that thing, and you don't necessarily want them all getting to you, because that could be a dangerous situation. So yeah, van again has kind of that window rule. In this case, because there are two seats with capacity for 3, but only the sides can kind of shoot out the window. That is a disadvantage. Is if you're packing a van, those middle seats for a while are not going to be super useful. But as with a car, as the van takes more damage, you're going to end up with windows blowing out, the side door blowing out, the back door blowing out, which makes it easier for even those folks sitting in the middle to attack out of it. The big thing with the vans is, in addition to that +1 defense roll that they share with the car, they also just add a straight 10 to your defense and resistance in the vehicle. Because the van is so large and so enclosed that it's highly protective, and we really wanted to capture that feel with the rules for the van. And you'll kind of see it will slowly lose these capabilities as it takes damage. Van's durability meter starting at 10, the maximum, makes it immensely durable, and as it starts to take damage, first you just lose a bit of defense and resistance, and the side door gets blown out, so you can shoot freely out of that. Awesome. Okay, we're running down the freeway with part of our van open, but in action movie logic, that's not always the worst thing in the world, right? Then you start to lose some of your movement. Van's already with the movement of 4, not especially fast, so this hurts. The rest of your defense and resistance bonus go away. The back door gets blown out, so people can shoot out of there too. In that case, it's the defense roll bonus, excuse me, and then the rest of the defense and resistance as the vehicle becomes open. So in this case, the back of the van's just been kind of blown open, so you're kind of your truck now. Would be sort of how this looks, and then at meter 1, of course, you're plodding along with everyone else at 2 movement. But then we also had a special car, the spy car, which was designed to be a juicy target, and as kind of expected, the players really went for it since it was a very nice car. So the spy car in this case, specially crafted, impervious to most conventional damage, which means that it doesn't have durability and it doesn't take damage. Seats up to 5. Has kind of that same limitation as a regular car. In this case, the spy card, since it's not taking damage, it's not going to be losing windows. So if someone does get squeezed into that middle seat, unless they are moving around inside the car to get a good shot, they're not going to be able to attack. Good space, for example, a VIP, if you are escorting one, to just kind of stick them there and say, all right, don't move, don't touch anything. Or a more supportive player who can just kind of heal everybody in the car while everyone else is gunning out the window. As such, obviously, the spy car is enclosed, as with the van, as with the regular car. It has that same +1 to defense rolls. It also gains that split move ability from the motorcycle set. The spy car being kind of, in theory, taking best components of multiple vehicles, just because it's a spy car. It's cool. It's fancy. It costs a lot of money. You want it to be exciting if someone actually manages to steal this thing. So yeah, it has a split move capability, so it gives you a lot of tactical options there. Especially since you can now ram people, like you could be ramming motorcycles with this and it would not harm your car at all. So a lot of nice potential there. Also, it has a move of 6, so it's a bit faster than a regular car. Not as fast as a motorcycle, but still very quick in terms of these vehicles. And it has a trunk full of weapons. With the additional idea that another passenger could ride in the trunk, or you could store a captive back there if you really needed to. In this case, this is kind of the effect where you can just kind of pull down the seat and get into the trunk very easily. Not something that really came up during that adventure, but something we wanted to have there as a bonus. And they did get into the trunk, because, as mentioned, it has a cache of weapons in it. And then finally, the car, of course, is equipped with an ejector sheet, so they can launch themselves and give themselves 2 movement to just jump to another vehicle, or jump to the side of the road and escape the engagement. So you can just, as a support action, launch yourself out of the car and use a bit of an extra movement to jump to another vehicle, or do something of interest. And then with the car, of course, we also gave it some cool toys within it. A spy car toting cavalier or knight, most likely in this case. Kind of that Bond archetype, right? Like, they're going to have the cool gadgets, they're going to have the cool weapons. So in this case, you've got a rocket-propelled grenade launcher in there, so you can just shoot rockets at people. You've got a magic lance in here, so you can just, launch magical attacks across the road. And my personal favorite, we'll say, the wide-range explosive anti-personnel munition weapon, which I learned when I was working in the defense industry that cluster munitions are illegal per the Geneva Convention, but we Americans love getting around that. So it's not what the weapon does; it's what it's classified as. So in this case, this weapon is classified as a wide-range explosive anti-personnel munition, in hopes that international law will not find that it violates the Geneva Conventions, even though it very likely does. But that's kind of a good overview of the various aspects of the freeway scene. I really like these rules personally, biased as I am. I think it prevents a lot of cool opportunities for this kind of modern action chase sequence where you can really just do a lot with it. I hope people will be interested in using them. I think there's a lot of fun to be had with them. I don't know that I've got anyone sitting around asking questions in chat, but if there are folks who would like to kick in some questions here, I am happy to. Oh, Jesus, my sound is not doing what I want it to do. But yeah, if there's anyone sitting around in chat who wants to ask some questions about these mechanics or about various setting things, happy to answer them. If not, then I'll probably just call this stream a bit early. These rules will be up on our itch.io page, where Valor is games there, and so they'll be going up pretty much after this stream concludes. And then, of course, Patreon backers backing at least $5 will get them for free when we do our kind of first of the month distribution of all of our content. So, it doesn't look like I'm seeing any questions here, so I'm going to go ahead and call it a bit early tonight. Next developer stream, probably be doing something a bit more setting focused, looking at the world of Valoress and the city in which our intrepid cavaliers find themselves in. So I hope you all look forward to that. And I will, this is Austin MacKenzie, again, lead designer and developer for Valorous Games, and I will talk to you all later. Thank you.